If you're talking about Jesus, he's a friend of mine. If you're talking about Jesus, he's a friend of mine. If the Lord help me, I can't stand the storm. Yeah! He's all right. These tears ain't nothing, but my train fell home. These tears ain't nothing, but my train fell home. I know. Yes. Hey, hold my peace. This fire keeps on burning. I can't hold my peace. Do you know it? Do you know it? Do you really know it?
Yes, sir.
bless. God bless. God bless. When the chief priests and the guards saw him, they shouted, "Nail him to the cross. Nail him to the cross." Pilate said to them, "You take him then and nail him to the cross. I find no reason to condemn him." The Jews answered back, "We have a law that says he ought to die because he claimed to be the Son of God." The 18th chapter of the Gospel according to John, verse 39 through 19 and 7, we have the words of our text. The verdict, not guilty. Sentence, death. Verdict, not guilty. Sentence, death. The greatest miscarriage of justice that has ever taken place in the history of the human race took place across the Kidron Valley from Jerusalem in the house of one Caiaphas, who was the high priest. For the master of all mankind was convicted, though innocent. And yet that was not the supreme insult, but coming back across the valley of Kidron and up through the city of David on Mount Zion, past the great temple to the fort of Antonio, he was led to stand before the Roman governor, Pilate. Jesus stood before Pilate. Pilate heard the complaints about him, and the master stood there and did not say a word. Pilate recognized that the testimony against Jesus could not be true because it was contradictory. But Jesus still said nothing. Pilate said to him, "Look, I know the testimony is confusing and contradictory. Don't you have anything to say?" Jesus said nothing. Finally, Pilate said, "You must not realize the seriousness of this situation, because I have the power to condemn you to death or to let you live." Jesus said, "You have no power except what my Father gives you." Oh, I say all of that to say that regardless of what men may do, regardless of the circumstances in which we find ourselves, we are never outside of the realm of God. We are never out of the hand of the Lord. Nothing can happen to you or me unless the Lord permits it to be. Jesus said, "I'm not worried about you condemning me. I'm not worried about being condemned at all. But still, as he stood there on trial, the unjust judge, Pilate, looked at the just one and said, I find no fault in him. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, I don't know about you, but I know there is no fault in him. There's no fault in Jesus. It doesn't matter, and he doesn't mind you sitting in judgment on it. Because the unrighteous judges of this world say, I find no fault in him. I don't find anything wrong with it. Herod sat in judgment on him and said, I find no fault in him, sent him to Pilate or somebody. And they carried him from courtroom to courtroom. And I wish you could see just where this was taking place. Well, you see, he was arrested at the foot of Mount Olives in the olive grove of Gethsemane. There he was led to the house of Annas, up the hill and to the house of Caiaphas. And this was a lot of walking all through the morning. And then they carried him from judgment hall to judgment hall. And he didn't worry about it because he knew who he was. And there they stood there, and he just stood before them and didn't worry about a thing. I keep telling you all the time that if the Lord is with you, you don't have to worry about the outcome. If the Lord is with you, you're going to make it. Lord is with you, it's going to be all right. Regardless of what's happening, if the Lord is with you, it's going to be all right. Jesus just went on through the trial. And finally, the unrighteous judge sat there and declared the verdict. You understand that in a trial, there must be a verdict. We must know whether the accused is guilty or innocent. Now, the plea was never offered. Jesus never pleaded guilty or not guilty. He didn't even make a plea. In our courts, they would have convicted him anyway and called it no contest. Yeah, that's what they would have done. He didn't contest the charges against him. But this unjust judge went a step forward, and instead of declaring it nolo contendere, he said to them, I found no fault in him. And I came here this morning just to back up what Pilate said. Because, you see, I've been trying for 48 years. And over all these years, I have found no fault in him. I've found that everything that he claimed to be, he is. I've found that whatever claims have been made for him, he is. For I know that he's been tried for a lot of things. Because so much has been said about him that no person could be everything that they say Jesus is. That's what we go after. We say, I can't nobody be that way. For all kind of things have been said about him. I've been told that he was bred. I said, all the men can't be bred. But then one day I got hungry. You understand? The way to try Jesus is through need. You see, you don't try Jesus through law. You don't try Jesus by statutes. You don't try Jesus by precepts. You try Jesus by need. You want to know if he's bred, get home. You find out. You ain't never been thirsty, you never will know that he's the living water. Oh, and if you don't get tired, you will never know he's the rock of ages. For they say a rock in a weary land when they talk about Jesus. Wonder sometimes if we know what it means. Rock in a weary land. For you see, the Israelites lived on the edge of the desert where the sun would beam down. There were no large shade trees to cut the sun off from burning down on them. But they were out there in the wide open desert. And the only thing you can see right now in the Judean desert, not a tree, not a sprig. All it is just rocks. But you see some rocks, good God Almighty, some rocks cast a shadow. You understand that every now and then when you're traveling in desert country, you see a rock that will cast a shadow. And if you think a shade tree can cast a shadow, you need to see a rock that casts a shadow across the desert. And when you're weary, that word weary means tired. When you're tired, and when you're hot, and when you're thirsty, and when it looks like you can't go on any longer, if you just see a great rock sitting out there in the desert, you just get on to the rock and get under its shadow, and then that rock will cool your scorching body. If you get under that rock, it's called a rock in a weary land. But see, that ain't all. It's not that it just casts a shadow that makes it so good, but the great rock not only casts a shadow, but it's got a hole in it. That hole is called a cleft. And when you get to the rock, it's cool enough in the shadow. But if you really want to get cool, get in the rock. For you see, it will cleft for you. That's what the great poet meant when he said, Rock of Ages, cleft for me. Just let me hide myself in thee, not only from the sun that beams down, but from the robbers that lurk on the trail, from my enemies that have dogged my steps. If you just cleft for me and let me hide myself in thee. He's been accused of being a rock. Now I found out he is a rock in a weary land. Not only that, I found out he's been accused of having beauty and comeliness, despite what Isaiah said about him being without beauty and comeliness. There's a paradox there because he is beautiful. The reason I know he's beautiful, I've ridden across the open plain of Sharon. There is a flower in the plain of Sharon called the Rose of Sharon, the most beautiful plant ever found in the world. And I found out he is, the Rose of Sharon. And if it gets dark, good God Almighty, there is in the early hours of the morning, before the sun comes up, there is a star that rises on the horizon in the brightest early part of the morning. It doesn't take the sun to bring light, but there is a star that shines in the morning that will light your path. It is called the bright and morning star. He is, the bright and morning star. Not only that, good God, I wish I could tell you everything he is, but one thing I'll tell you, above all things, I found out he is, my friend, when I'm in trouble, friend, when all my friends are gone, he is my friend. No one he didn't have to answer before Pilate, because we can answer for him. Good God Almighty, listen to him when he was declared to be not guilty. And then we would have jumped up and tore up the courtroom rejoicing. But after the verdict was passed, and folks started shouting, he said, wait a minute, it's not over yet. The sentence is still to be passed. Well, I never heard of the sentence being passed when the verdict is not guilty, but they sentenced him anyhow. They said, crucify him, nail him to the cross. And Pilate said, I want nothing to do with it. I told you I find no fault in him, but they condemned him anyhow. And early Friday morning, on a hill called Golgotha, they nailed nails in his hands, they nailed spikes in his feet, speared him in the side, crowned his head with 72 thorns, gave him vinegar mingled with gold. He died. Hey, he died till the sun draped his face in darkness, till the moon dripped away in blood, died till the earth reeled and rocked like a drunken man, died. Yeah, Lord. Then they buried him in Joseph's tomb all night long. Friday night, all night long. Friday night, all day long. Saturday, all night long. Saturday night, he lay in the tomb, but I came to tell you early, Sunday morning, he got up. All power in heaven and earth is in my hand. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Lord, the church is open.